Hi, it's ChickenboneJohn here. Welcome to our first video in how to build a cigar box guitar from scratch. The first thing we're going to be talking about doing is gluing up a neck. Here's one in true Blue Peter fashion I did before. We're going to take you through the basics of the most important part of your guitar, and that's the neck. We're going to be using, in this case, it's a piece of cherry wood, a piece of hardwood. We've got the headstock cut here, but the thing we're going to show you how to do is how to set out the guitar so it fits the box and glue on this thickening part here, which is going to go through the body, which I call the backstrap, and that's the key of making a guitar that's going to be structurally sound, that's going to resonate well and resist the forces on the neck. So here we go, let's get into the first part of our build. What we're going to start with is a couple of pieces of timber. Here's one. This is going to be the neck itself. This is a piece of 35 by 22 cherry wood, and it's 900 millimeters long. If you're working in inches, that's about 1.5 inches by 7/8 by 36. That's going to be the neck itself. I've got another piece here the same size, but this is a bit scruffy here. It's got some splits and shakes, so it's not much use. But I'm going to cut a piece to provide the back strap. What we are going to end up with is something like this. This is a neck that's had the headstock shaped, a fretboard glued onto it, and then it's been cut here to receive the body, and eventually, just for your information, that's a piece of yellow poplar, the neck and what we call the back strap, with a piece of sapele on there. And here's a finished neck. This one's done in maple all the way through, with a maple back strap and a blackwood tech fretboard, all fretted, dotted down the side, and got some nice abalone inlay. And that's just having the oil finish put on it. First thing we need to do is just to offer up the neck to the box, assuming that you've got a piece of wood that's about that size. I've got a couple of boxes here. I've got a goodly, a nice size one here, and a smaller one, and I'll show you how we fit this up. So we're just going to set out our neck. First thing we're just going to do is mark up the headstock. This is the sort of effect I want to get. I'm not putting any joint in the neck or whatever. If your neck is 22mm with a 6mm fretboard on or thereabouts, that's going to be thick enough. What we want to do is to end up with this bit 14 or 15 millimeters deep. So that will allow the machine heads to be in the right position. That's 14mm, and I want to come in here about 125. This is not precise, but we like this because it allows you a bit of freedom to where you put your tuners, and gives us room to put a badge on or whatever. So where we've got that 14mm, I'm just going to gauge a line here, just with a pencil. There, that's it. And then we're going to, I like to round that in. So that's where we're aiming for there. So that comes out on the top of my box there. I'll mark that with a square, so I know where that is going to end up at. Now I'm going to use a pre-slotted fretboard here, and that's going to, as you can see, I've already splayed the top of that, so you can see where the strings are going to start. I'm using a bolt in here as the nut. Sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? But yeah, it's a machine screw, and the string's going to ride in the middle of that. So that's the middle of the bolt. That's where the string's going to start. So my strings are going to be going from there to the bridge. Now the distance from this point, whoops, to where the bridge is going to be on your guitar, that's called the scale length. That's the bit of the string that does the vibrating. And in this case, we're going to do it as 25.5. 25.5 inches, 648 millimeters. That's a Fender scale. Now the reason we're doing it like that is because I'm going to use a pre-slotted fretboard, and this is set out for that scale. If you make the strings any longer or shorter, i.e. if your bridge is in the wrong position, it will play out of tune. This will only play in tune when the strings are set up at 25.5 inch from nut to saddle, and that's from the center of those dimensions. Okay, so we know where the strings are going to start and where they're going to stop on the bridge. So a couple of things we can do now. If we take a box that we want to use, we'll take the big one for example, like this. Let's move this up here. And we'd like to get the bridge position somewhere about here. I like it to be about quarter way up the box for sort of aesthetics, handleability, and for getting the box to ring right. It'll look really weird and if you're in the middle here, and if you're at the end, you've not got much room for the box to be vibrating. You're right on the edge. So I like to be in about here, which is, I'm guessing 6 or 7, yeah, I mean on that, yeah, 60 millimeters. Okay, so that's where that's going to be. You can see that's all going to work nicely. Bridge here, bit sticking out to get your tailpiece in. Okay, this piece here, I'm going to glue a piece underneath that's going to run all the way through the box, like this, like this one we have here. I call this the backstrap, and it reinforces the neck. And now here's a principle which I stick to. If I think that that's my neck here, total thickness is about, it's a bit thicker here, but we'll call it 28 millimeters. By the time we've notched it for going inside the box here, and then notched it maybe to get a pickup, that wants to be about the same as that. Doesn't want to be any thinner. So I still need to be, you know, in the region of, and if I look there, I'm going to have about 26 millimeters left inside my box. If this bit isn't added, the neck's going to be very thin in here. And can you see where I've got my, if we're doing it like this and did a cutout, we'd have nothing left, and the neck would bend. It would actually hinge around that point. That's why we glue this backstrap piece on. Okay, so I know how that's going to fit here, and I'm going to make a backstrap, and I want that to come out. I want it to run from the tailstock here to about here. Where did I say? I said about 60 millimeters. So I want it to come out about here. So if I put that on there, this piece of wood I've got here, this other piece of cherry, it's got some fractures in here, but the rest of it's good. But if I offer this up, see here, and I'm thinking, yeah, it wants to come out, we're going to make it about like that. So when that's all glued up, it's going to project out then nicely and reinforce it. So that's about the right size. If I were, for example, using the smaller box, same principle applies for setting it out. Wrong piece there. Get the piece I'm going to use for my neck. Okay, and I'm going to, the bridge is going to be about the same position, maybe a little bit further back on this one, smaller box. Just get the proportions. Yeah, I've got about 5 centimeters, and then you can do the same thing with your neck. Sorry, your backstrap. Thinking that might want to come in about there. So you could cut your piece like that, and that would also be appropriate for that neck. It might look a bit weird if the heel comes right the way through here, further up the neck. I like to keep it, you know, maybe between 20 and 40 millimeters out from here, so you've got enough scope to carve that and shape it nicely. Okay, so that's the basic setting out. I don't treat this as with a set of drawings. It's all done by eye, really, eye and common sense. So I've marked this off here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut that on about a 45-degree angle. And I'm just going to cut it with a tenon saw. To help me, I'll just clamp it down to my workbench. This is the bench I use for my my light assembly work and my soldering. This is not my main sort of heavy-duty workbench. And it's just an old drawing board, which actually is just a piece of chipboard with some melamine top and bottom, screwed to the wall with a batten, and it's got a couple of steel legs here and here from IKEA, and so it's nice and stable. And because it's screwed back to the wall, it's not going to move. So always helps if you clamp your piece of work down. And you can see this bit of the desk, I've just got some parcel tape on. Just helps keep the glue off it and so forth. And to do this cut, I've got a few things I got out here earlier. I'm just going to use a tenon saw. A saw with a back, nice and stiff. And I'm just going to go across here on my mark. Don't need to be too accurate. We get the cuts going and try and keep it square. I'm just looking down here. You see, as I hold it, I'm sawing left-handed because I'm left-handed. I sort of am ambidextrous, so I tend to favour my left hand. But if you see the way I'm holding the saw, finger pointing to give a bit of stability. And you want to keep it vertical and pretty much on the line. Nice steady strokes. I don't think we're far out. You see, I'm using all of the saw. Great expression that I heard from somebody in Germany, and it just sounded like me old dad with a Yorkshire expression. You've bought all the saw, use all of it. So there you go, nice even strokes, and we're through. As you see, I've just got a backing board underneath there to stop that damaging my workbench. So that's my scrap. I'm at a bit of an angle. That's not awfully important, we can trim that up. Okay? So the next thing we want to do with these things is glue them together. This is where we've marked our headstock out, and this is going to go on here as our back strap. Okay? There's a little bit of curve in that. I think it's in this neck because it's a bit gappy. I'm not going to worry about that at this stage. I'm going to put that one down there, that one down there. Now I'm going to put some glue on this face, and it'll tend to slip about. So to help it stop slipping about, I'm going to put some pins in here. Now you can just use ordinary panel pins, drive them in with a hammer or nip them off, but I find it convenient because we do a lot of this stuff. I've just got a hand tacker. This will take staples or these cut brads. I'm going to put a couple of pins in away from where I'm going to be carving it here. So about there, and well in from the end where I might be drilling it for the screw for the strings. Okay, and then I'm just going to nip that off. I'm going to hold that pin because if I don't, it might fly out and strike me in the eye, so do be careful. So I'll wear safety glasses ideally. So that's done. Get rid of those. So when I put that on, it's going to grab it. Okay? So we're going to put some glue on here and then clamp it up. I'm going to be using Titebond, ordinary Titebond glue. You get this in sort of specialist sort of woodworking places. You won't get it in your big box stores, but if you go to places like Axminster or Rutland in the UK, you'll get this, or go on eBay. Any sort of white or yellow wood glue is good. I don't like the sort of polyurethane style ones and the epoxy ones. Water-based is great. The Titebond 2 and the weather resistance, you're not going to get any benefit from it. They're no stronger. They're water resistant, but you're not going to be taking this thing out and leaving it in the rain. So original Titebond is fine. I believe people like Martin and Gibson use it. So I'm just putting a just put a bead of glue down there. A fair bit. I don't want too much. And then you can spread it with just a scrap of wood or something. I've got a wallpaper roller here. You know, a seam roller. That's that. And we're just going to press these together. Now, because I'm going to do it on the bench here, I'm going to turn this on edge and this on edge so that these will be aligned. They're the same size of timber. 22 by 35, and I'm just going to press those together by hand and feel to see if it's aligned. You can make this bit a bit wider and then you can plane it and sand it if you're not too confident about getting them aligned. That can be a bit of a faff, but that seems to be okay. Right, you can see the gap, don't worry about that. I'll just get some clamps. Now, you can clamp it with these and they'll work, the speed clamp sort of thing, but I never feel they give the real true grip that you want. The great thing is they've got these padded jaws and it will go together fine. In fact, we can do it now. I'd put 3 on this, but I've only got a couple of these to hand. So if I do that, find my other one, which is here. You can clamp that up. You can see we're getting some glue squeeze out. On both sides, and feel. And if it's not quite right, you can just tap that back. You can tap it in place with a hammer, with a piece of wood. I can feel that they're flush now. That's fine. And I've put another clamp in the middle, but I'll show you the type of clamp that I prefer. Cast iron C clamp. These are 4-inch, 100mm. These came from Rutland's in the UK. I've got nothing to do with any of these companies that I mentioned, but for 10 of these was less than £30, including the postage. Absolute bargain, less than £3 a piece. They're heavy duty and they'll really exert the proper force you want. Some people do say that they think over clamping can starve all the glue out of it, and squeeze all the glue out of it and starve the joint. I've never really had that experience. Now, if you're using cast iron clamps, you'll need to put some protection because they exert so much force. You just want a little wooden packer, what is known as a caul, on both sides. Just pack that up because the weight of the clamps pulling it over. I'm going to take this other one off, see how it's sprung out, but that's going to be perfectly fine. I'm not panicking about that. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to be quite close to the end, you know, 1 inch or 2, and I'm feeling with my thumb as I'm clamping. I'm pressing down onto the flat of my bench. Now just doing enough to close that joint up and start getting some squeeze out. I could feel it one side lifting, so I just pressed down with my thumb. So I'm going to put my last one in here. I'll reopen that. calls on my little bit of, these are just piece of offcuts from fretboards and cutting headstocks and what have you. Make sure that your clamps are in the centre of the wood. If you put them over on one side towards one edge, it'll tend to squeeze one edge in and push the other out. So make sure they're bang in the centre. And I'm not exerting a huge amount of force, just I'm getting the squeeze out here, and just feel that. So I'm just going to pinch them all up, then turn it over, check the other side, and I can feel that's pretty good. I think that's going to be acceptable. So now I'm going to just cramp these up with a bit more force. I'm not going mad with it, but it's as hard as it is, you know, to be comfortable on your hands. That's squeezing the glue out a wee bit, making these two pieces of wood come into contact. You want a narrow joint. Glue isn't a good filler, so you need these two faces to be as flat as you can, planed flat preferably rather than sanded. Now we've got a bit of squeeze out, so I'm just going to wipe off the excess with just a sort of sponge scouring pad. It will make then cleaning up with a plane or sanding that bit easier when we've done. The nice thing about Titebond, it does dry pretty hard, and I'm also going to clean my bench up so I don't get an accumulation of rubbish, of glue. So that's it. The joint's clamped up, and we've got the basics of our neck put together. I recommend leaving that overnight. You know, you can unclamp within a few hours, but but even then you wouldn't want to work it or put any stress on it for at least, I would say, 12 hours. My preference is we clamp this up and come back to it overnight. So you want at least an overnight dry. You really want at least, absolute minimum, I would say, just trying to figure out what the time is now, you know, I'd be looking for 12-15 hours ideally. A full day is great, but if you glue something up in the morning, leave it overnight, it's got to have a full 24 hours. In the afternoon is fine, coming back to it in the morning, midday. Okay. Oh, and a handy piece of information: wherever you're gluing it up, if you're working outside in cold conditions, bring the work inside to room temperature. Most glues do not like getting cold. Once this stuff starts getting near freezing, and that can be quite a few degrees above freezing, it doesn't like it and loses its strength. If you ever do this, clamp up a piece of work in the cold and leave it in the cold, you'll find any squeeze out goes white, like a chalky colour. If you see that happening, you've let the glue go off at far too cold a temperature, and it can fail. It goes very chalky. I'm not quite sure chemically what happens. So that's a word to the wise. Clamp up and bring ideally at room temperature. If you're working in a colder workshop or shed or garage, as soon as you've clamped up, bring it inside and let it cure overnight. Okay, so that was the first part of building the guitar neck, and the next part we're going to be telling you how to shape the neck, get this cleaned up and cut this ready to fit onto the box, and then we can also fit a fretboard. That's the next lesson. Stick with us. Bye for now.